All right, welcome everyone. Today is Security Plus Day. We'll be focusing primarily on Security Plus and the concepts and ideas that you're going to see during this exam. Okay, I'm not going to go too much into the objectives. Each session I kind of spend like the first 5 minutes just walking through the importance of the objectives and how to use them. I'm not going to go too much into it. There is a video in the student forum under the new student zone here. New student zone, come to the forum, go to the new student zone. There's a video here that walks you through how to use the objectives. So if you have a question about that and the importance of them and how to use them, just watch this video. It's not too long. It's probably like 20 minutes, something like that. So, all right. Okay, so Sec Plus, before we get into it, I just want to kind of get an idea of where everyone is. How many people here have taken the exam at least once? Or if you're just studying, if you just started studying, just kind of give me an idea of where everyone is. So if you just started studying, let me know. If you're already taking it, let me know. Okay. Looks like Crystal just started studying. Nice. What else? Who else? Final MOS exam. Okay, yeah. So if you're still working on the MOS exams, this may be a little bit outside of the realm of what you're studying, obviously, unless you have some experience there. So.
Yeah, this is Benjamin. I'm 2 weeks out from my first try with the 501. I've already done the 301 several times.
Mm-hmm.
Passed it once. So.
Okay.
And then the 401, I believe I took that, but I failed that one. But that was my first time being exposed to lab questions in the Security Plus. I don't know if the 501 has that same model, but I did do all the necessary prep work. My major thing I'm working on is differentiating between the encryption, authentication, and then pretty much, since there's a lot of acronyms, focusing on that.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Trying to figure out how to read a question for those keywords. I know how to identify. It seems like the encryption ones, it's going to have EH, and the authentication is going to have AH, and then I forget what the other ones are that are going to be the common things that's a part of security.
Right. Yeah, we can definitely go through some of those and try to give you some ideas of how to make those a little bit easier to associate. Sounds good. So to answer your question, yes, the 501 is going to have performance-based questions. It's not going to have as many as the prior exams. So the 301, I believe it had, I can't remember. It's been so long since I've taken it, but you know, I had a few there, maybe 5 or 6, something like that. The 401, I had a few less. Probably I had like 3 or 4 for the 401, and the 501 I haven't taken yet. But I can tell you this, from the other exams that I've taken, you know, certifying the first time and then recerting the next time I took the next version of the exams to A+, right? I just took the 1001 a few weeks ago. Okay, and what I've noticed is they carry over a lot of the concepts, not just the concepts, but the actual test questions that they kind of carry over. So if you have some experience there with taking some of the prior exams, you should get a bit of familiarity there um, with at least the structure of the questions, and they do carry over some. I mean, I saw some on the 1001 that I saw on the 801. So there's some questions that there's some concepts that they just carry over, and what you're really looking for when you're taking a new version of the exams, you're just looking for what did they change, right? Which objectives did maybe they took a few percentage points off of one objective. Maybe they took a whole objective and moved it to, moved it off of the exam. Maybe they added one. The biggest jump that I remember from the Net Plus exam was the first one. Didn't have as much troubleshooting, and then the first one I took was the 005, and then when I took the 006, troubleshooting had its own knowledge domain. So that was probably the biggest difference between those two exams. But the rest of them, a lot of the concepts and stuff carry over. So it's just about identifying, what's different, what they change, and things like that. Okay. To answer your question, Kelly, yeah, MOS is Microsoft Office Specialist. So that's going to be your Office exams, your Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, those deals there. Let's see. Johnny's wanting to take the 1001. Okay. Yeah, no worries. Some of the stuff is going to tie in here too. Port numbers, some of your simple security concepts. More specifically on the second exam is where you get your introduction to security and there. So, you'll start to get your introduction to the stuff that you're going to see here. Once you get past the 1001, then you move on to the 1002. So, all right. So like I said, I'm not going to go all the way through these, but I will mention this because you did bring it up. So acronyms are going to be huge on this exam. There's a ton of them. If you scroll through the objectives, you'll see that. I think there's more here than you see on any other exam, but don't quote me on that. You see a lot of this stuff, right? And like here with 4.2, not only do you see all of these, but they're asking you, given a scenario, install and configure, right? And so not only do you want to understand what all of this stuff is and know the characteristics of it and things like that, you also want to get some experience installing and configuring this stuff, which may be easy to do, may not, just depending on the resources you have available to you. But I highly recommend it. Anytime you see given a scenario and they want you to install or configure something, find a way to practice doing it. Because if they ask you to do it on the exam, you don't want that to be your first time doing it. That's my point there anyway. What I was doing was I was scrolling down to the acronyms. Okay, so as far as the acronyms go, there's a huge list at the bottom. You're going to see a ton of them on this exam. Everywhere you look, you're going to see acronyms. So, when you see these acronyms and you don't know what they are, scroll down to the bottom, past the objectives, and then you'll get a list of all the acronyms. You can see more here, right? So yeah, just keep scrolling till you get past the last objective, and then your list is down here. So just look for the ones that you see above somewhere and you're not sure what it is. My strategy is flashcards. Those work for me. May not work for everyone. Just kind of find what works for you. Just make sure that you instill those in your head as best as you can, because you will see a ton of acronyms on the exam. I can pretty much guarantee that. Okay, so yeah, here's your list down here at the bottom. All right. So you were talking about some encryption. So starting here, what you want to do is you want to start getting the characteristics of these. You want to find out, okay, WPA, where did WPA come into play? Pretty much after they decided that web wasn't getting it done, right? So they used WPA and they introduced a new technology that was supposed to outdo web, which was TKIP, right? It uses NC4 as well. Okay, so with WPA, you just want to make sure that you understand that this was designed to replace web, which isn't really considered secure. You never want to use web, right? And WPA is using TKIP. All right, TKIP was designed to replace web, and then after a while, they figured out that TKIP was better than web, but it wasn't the best. It wasn't the best option, and then that's when WPA came around, and now you're talking about AES. Okay, so for this exam, just kind of keep in mind what WPA is using CCNP, right, and AES. So TKIP you want to associate with WPA, and then CCP and AES you want to associate with WPA too. Okay, for the exam. It was just stuff you're going to learn through the lectures, through Jason's training or whatever other training you're using to supplement the online expert training. Just make sure you're paying close attention to the differences between all of these, right? Because they're going to test you on that on the exam. And more than likely, whatever question they're asking you about this, they're going to throw at least 3 of these in there, 2 or 3 of these in there. So you have to make sure that you definitely understand the differences between each one. Okay, characteristics, differences, all of that stuff. And then also pay close attention to this, because sometimes they'll just ask you to identify something or the significance of something, or compare and contrast. And in those scenarios or in those instances, you just want to make sure that the characteristics and the differences. In these instances, you want to make sure that you want to get some practice with stuff. So anyway, that's my spill there. All right. This exam is really, there's a lot of terms in here. You can see, right? It's just acronym after acronym. There's AES, there's DES, there's 3 DES, right? There's RC4. So, just make sure that you understand all of these. Up here, it's a little bit, they're just talking about explain, right? It just says explain, cryptography, algorithms, right? So you just have to really understand what each of these are, but they're not asking you to configure it or anything. So make sure as you're going through your training or, whatever it is that you're doing, if you're doing hands-on stuff, you're just kind of picking and selecting, which ones you need to make sure you get some, you get some hands-on time with, and which ones is cool to kind of just get the gist of it, the differences, and that'll give you a better idea how to approach each sub-objective, right? Some of them you want to make sure you get some hands-on. Some of them you just want to make sure that you understand the basics, right? Make sure that you understand the basics and that you can identify and differentiate between this stuff. Okay, hopefully that makes sense, especially here, because cryptography and PKI, which is basically public key infrastructure, this section here, you're not going to see a lot of it on the exam. You can see here, right, there's 4 sub-objectives here. So there's not a lot here. And then on top of that, if I scroll up to the top and go to the percentages, you will see, cryptography is probably about 12%, I think. Yeah. So this, you can expect to see not too much of this. You're still going to see probably, 4 or 5, maybe 6 questions on this, but not enough to overly affect your score. You're not, it doesn't really compare to technologies and tools, right? You're going to see a lot more of this than you're going to see of cryptography. So keep that in mind as well as you're studying. This is kind of your guide. These objectives are your guide, and it gives you an idea of what you need to know and how much of it you need to know. And then not only that, but what you need to know about each section. So definitely something to look out for. Okay, let's see. Looks like I got a couple questions here, so sure feels like there are a lot more. So it's saying on the test, we set up enterprise mode, had to do the configuration on the access point by checking the servers for IP authentication, etc. Yeah, that sounds like something that you can typically see on this exam. I remember on my last security exam, they gave me a network, right? So there were end devices, and then there were access points. I had like switches and routers, and I think there were a couple servers. And over on the right, I had a bunch of different tools, right? I had a bunch of different tools or things that you would use to secure the network, to make it more, right, to harden it, to make it more secure. So for instance, for the end devices like the PCs and, the mobile devices and things like that, they had two mics. Sorry about that. So, for example, like I was saying, for the end devices, for the PC, for the mobile devices, printers and things like that, there was antivirus software or cable locks, right? So that's a way to secure the software and the hardware, right? And they had I think there was IPS, right? I think there was like a server room. So they had different things that you would do, and you just need to know where to apply those, right, in the network to make it more secure, right? So something like that, or you can get a scenario where you've been brought in to an already existing situation, and after analyzing it, you're looking for for the holes, you're looking for the weaknesses. So they may give you sort of a baseline of where everything is or how everything was set up, and then you have to look for how you would change it. So for instance, maybe the VTY lines are open and there's no password, right? That's a security flaw. Or maybe there is a password but you're using Telnet, right? By the time you get to Security Plus, you should know that Telnet is probably not something that you want to use for remote access, right? You don't want to be remote and using Telnet because it transmits in plain text. So, maybe in that instance you would change it to Secure Shell, right, to harden the system. Or you notice that you're using HTTP instead of HTTPS. Same thing with FTP, right? So you really want to know which protocols are considered secure versus the ones that aren't. Okay. And then that way it makes it easy when they put you in a scenario and you spot those, maybe someone's using WEP, right? They have an access point that's using WEP. You should be able to spot that immediately, right? Change that right off at the top. This is what I'm talking about right here, right? Implement secure protocols. This is something that you definitely can see. 2.6 is right here, right? So when they put you in a situation and they're throwing protocols at you, just think to yourself, okay, is this one that's considered secure or is it unsecure? Very important for Security Plus, right? To be able to spot those, right? The secure ones, right? Because then you have HTTP and you have HTTPS, right? A lot of the times when you see these V2 or V3 means that it's another version that's been created, and more than likely that version has been created to fill some type of security hole or efficiency, right? Maybe it's not as efficient as it could be, and so they implemented another version. A lot of the times it's not as secure as it should be, so they implemented another version, right? So look for those as well. Okay. What else on this exam are you going to see? Deploy mobile devices securely. That's another thing that's been, as time goes by, mobile devices are, they do a lot more. And they've been around more. They've been around a lot longer as time goes by. And so, the longer they're around, the more you need to know about them. So, mobile devices wasn't a huge deal when I was first certifying back in 2013, but now you see them all over the place, right? On each of these exams, you're going to see mobile devices and things like that. So, architecture and design. Not so much. Okay. Yeah, what questions do you guys have? It looks like I got another one. Got nothing that resembles what I saw on Youth Certify. If you don't have a good knowledge of security implementations within the workplace, it is good to understand what they teach you when you certify. Yeah, I don't know if what you see in Youth Certify is going to be close to what you see on the exam. Youth Certify is kind of it's a place to give you, some hands-on, give modules so you can put some of the concepts into action. But for the most part, you're not going to see the activities that you're doing in Youth Certify on the actual exam. One of the reasons is because the majority have multiple choice. So, but that is a good point. Some of the stuff some of the activities that you're doing in Youth Certify are just kind of designed to reinforce some of the concepts that you're learning and let you put them into practice. But don't expect to see any of those activities on the actual exam.
Hey, Tristan, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just took it on the first and finally passed the test. That's what I was trying to kind of hint to on the test. If you understand what you're looking for, you're never going to do the hands-on that's in Youth Certify. But what I saw pop up the most was the hacking section. It's like what they're going to give you like a tidbit, like it's like 2 lines of code that's being run, but it's not enough to figure it out. But if you did the Youth Certify, they did those exact same lines. So as soon as I saw it, I was like, okay, I know this is an SQL injection. So I knew I had, out of the 4 answers, I had to focus on the 2 that were based around SQL injection. So I'd tell you that's the only part I got out of it was on the question answers. The hands-on, they're nothing like the hands-on, if that helps.
Right. That's good information. Appreciate that. Yeah, that's the other thing. Another thing that I forgot to mention. You can be expected to interpret output, syntax, things like that. So it is a good idea to get some time and some practice, looking at stuff like that. And they do mention that if you go all the way down below the acronyms, there's a software hardware list down here, right? And it has a bunch of stuff that they recommend that you spend some time playing around with and looking at, right? Like Wireshark being one of them. It's a real big one. TCP dump. The good thing about this is, about the software tools, is most of this is just downloads. And even if it's not free, most of the time there's a trial version that you can use for study purposes. And so I highly recommend that as well, so you can get some practice, not only looking at and playing with some of the tools, but understanding the concepts better. That's what practice does for you. It gives you a better understanding of what you're looking at. Otherwise, if he hadn't done that and you hadn't looked at it, I remember I took a Cisco exam one time and it gave me some output that I'd never seen before, and it was just, it was a guess. It was, that was one of the questions where it was just a guess because I hadn't spent any time looking, even though I had spent a lot of hands-on time doing configurations and things. The output that I saw was foreign, so I just ended up making my best guess. But if you don't spend some time playing with some of this stuff and you see that, you see some output or something that you're not used to, you're just going to be taking a guess unless there's something in there that you can spot. So that's why I recommend doing that. You have to download all this stuff. No, just, pick a few highly recommended ones, do some research on others that have taken the exam and find out what they use that helped them. And then, kind of go from there. For me, it was stuff like Wireshark. I did a lot of practicing in virtual environments. So I downloaded virtual machines when I was preparing for A+. And so, when I moved on to net and to security, I utilized those virtual machines to kind of, I use it as kind of a practice field, so to speak, to download and to play with some of this stuff without having to worry too much. So this is another thing that I highly recommend. A lot of this stuff you can gain access to through free virtualization software. One of them would be Packet Tracer. You can gain access to just about everything listed here through Packet Tracer. Just about, not all of it, but most of the stuff is available there, fully configurable. So that's what I recommend. Going through the training. Jason's training is great. I love the way that he teaches because a lot of the times he's showing you what he's doing. He's not just saying it, and it makes it a little bit easier to remember stuff. But at the same time, you're only gonna pull so much from listening to someone else. So, from lectures and note taking, you only gain so much from that. You really learn more once you start to put the concepts into play. So that's why I recommend that. Okay. Password cracking.
Hey, Tristan.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, on that last section you were talking about, VPN concentrators, I want to say I got like 4 or 5 between knowing load balancing and VPN concentrators. They had a lot. I think I got 3 they almost felt identical, and I had to go back to the question to see what it was asking, and I realized I would have got it wrong because I wasn't paying attention. They were trying to ask me what I would, there's multiple connections coming in from different locations, but nowhere did it say secure. So it kind of threw me off. So I kind of oh, that's a VPN concentrator, but it didn't say secure. That's what I should have noticed. So when you guys get to those questions and you see them where it pops up, it almost look like the same question, but they'll add the word security to it. It needs to be secure. This is a secure connection from both places. And then I was like, oh man, that's a VPN concentrator. And then this one, you just need to have load balancing because you have all these connections coming in. And then the password cracking, I took the test 3 times to pass. And the questions that came up almost every time was Cain enable. I had 3 questions on Cain enable alone. No, I didn't have any wire. There's a Wireshark output. They're going to show you the output. They're not going to show you Wireshark. I was expecting, I took the test a couple years ago, and they used to show you where you need to click in Wireshark, but now they on all 3 tests, they gave me outputs of Wireshark and other tools. So know what the output's going to be depending on what you're doing. I would say that's what got me the most. Luckily, I play with different stuff. I did just what Tristan said. I sat on all these things and I downloaded everyone, and I followed along with what Jason's doing when he does the class, and then just played with it. And then I would say, if you guys really want to see how the questions are based, the closest I found to the test is Udemy's SYO5. That was the closest to how the questions are worded and the hands-on. They're not identical, but when you see them, you're gonna be like, okay, well, that was pretty close.
Great info. Appreciate that.
What was, I
Yeah.
couldn't understand what I couldn't understand what he said about the thing that came closest to the questions.
I'll post the link. I actually it was like $10. It's called Udemy. If you've never seen it, it's like all these classes done by the people like Jason, but they don't work for a testing center. They
Okay.
have 20, 30 years in the industry, but they have tests in there after you do their training. So I just took the test. I was like, I figured Jason was, I would say, gave me about 50% of the test. The other part I got from Udemy, and the way they word the questions is identical to the CompTIA test.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Udemy. Right. Yeah, that's another source. Another good source that I hear a lot of good things about. Been in a few CompTIA forums the last couple of years. Udemy is one that comes up a lot. That a lot of people have good things to say about. Particularly Mike Myers for A+. What I would warn you about that is if you're going to purchase Udemy courses, what I would do is wait until they're on sale, because a lot of them, they're pretty pricey. They come with a lot of content. They come with training and practice labs and practice exams and things like that. And so sometimes they're pricey, but if you wait and just kind of check on them here and there, you can catch it on sale like he did. He said he got it for $10, and it's normally what the sale price is. So just make sure that if that's something you want to do, I would just kind of wait until you can catch it on sale, because the actual prices are pretty steep. Some of them are like $100 to $300 for all of this stuff. So. But yeah, I mean, I would definitely recommend at least two main sources, Online Expert being one with Jason, and then from there, just find another one that kind of reinforces or fills whatever holes you have from Jason. So like he said, he got about 50% from Online Expert in Jason's course, and then he kind of supplemented that with the Udemy course, and that's something that I recommend everyone do. That's something that I did. Because you want to have two sources just in case, one doesn't explain something well enough, or, whatever the case is. Or if you have situations where you may have conflicting information. Yeah, Professor Messer is another one. I use Professor Messer primarily when I was going through as a student. He was my second source. So. But yeah, sometimes you get conflicting information, and you want to make sure that it's not actually conflicting, right? So it's always good to have at least two sources, especially with the practice exams too. You definitely do not want to take any practice exam too many times, because you start to memorize the questions, and that's definitely something you want to avoid. So Exam Compass would be something I would recommend to avoid that. It has a ton of practice exams, so I'll go ahead and show that for anyone that's unaware. You have A+ here. You can see they still have 900 series stuff here, at least for a few more weeks anyway. Then you have your 1000 series stuff down here. Looks like they're still working on it. 1002, 1001 they pretty much have set here. So here's your Net Plus stuff, and then security is going to be down here, right? So you have 24 different practice exams, right? And then under that, you have topic-specific quizzes here. So you have just a malware quiz, just a social engineering quiz, right? Just a cryptography quiz, whatever you want to focus on, you can just take those quizzes. The one that I really like for Net Pluses, like after I get done showing everyone how to subnet, you should come take this subnetting quiz, because this tests you. And that's really what subnetting is about. It's just repetition. The more you do it, the better you'll get at it. At first, it's kind of hard to grasp, but once you get it, it's just about repetition. So, after I do a subnetting session, which I'll probably do tomorrow, I always tell everyone, come here and then practice here. If you can get through this, then you'll be pretty good. You'll be pretty decent at subnetting. So Anyway, good info. Appreciate that, Mike. Glad to have you passing that information around, and then also congrats on your exam pass. Okay, about 20 minutes left. What else do we have? What other questions do we have on Security Plus? Are there any specific questions that anyone has? Okay. Doesn't look like there's any specifics. So I'll just give my spiel, my advice, my strategy, and then if there's nothing else, I'll let you guys go. So I guess I'll start with my strategy. My strategy is the same as always for any exam. I'm actually preparing to take the 1002 right now, and I'm doing the same strategy. I do it for every exam, okay? Start at the top. Very first objective, right? 1.1. And this is before I even start any training. This is before I answer any practice exams or any of that. Come up here, identify what do I know, what don't I know? What am I good on? What do I need to recap? Okay. So, and it's going to be different for everyone. You know, I've been doing this stuff for a while. So when I come through here, you know, just about half of this stuff I'm pretty good on. You know, actually probably about 70% of it I'm pretty good on. And then about 30% I need to go through and I need to recap and just make sure that I understand as well as I did when I was studying the first time. Right. But yeah, I just come through here and, you know, I'm good on all this. So I'll mark it off. I don't need to watch a session on viruses. I understand viruses pretty well. Crypto malware, I understand pretty well, right? It's pretty much when someone is, they encrypt your files and then tell you if you want access to them, you're going to have to pay, right? So, you know, I understand what a worm is. I understand what a Trojan is. So this stuff I'm not really worried about, right? I just kind of mark it all off and then I move down. And social engineering I'm pretty good on, right? So I just mark all this stuff down, mark it off, so I don't go through it again. I don't waste time going through stuff I already know. And then I'll just look for, you know, let's say that I'm a little iffy on whatever, right? I'll just pick one, right? Let's just say that I'm a little iffy on load balancing. That's what he was talking about before, right? Maybe I need to do a refresher on load balancing. So I'm going to leave this blank. It lets me know that I need to go over it. Sorry. Or maybe I need to go through, you know, intrusion prevention versus intrusion detection again. So I understand this fully, right? So I'll leave this blank too, all right? So this is, you know, that's where I'm starting at. And then when I get down to the bottom, I have a baseline. I know exactly what I know. I know what I don't know, what I need to go over again. And then I can just kind of start there. You go all the way back to the top and then just look for the stuff that you left blank. Okay. That's also the strategy I recommend for anyone that has, let's say that you took an exam and you fell a little short. You know, instead of going through everything over again, just look for the areas. It highlights it on your printout. It'll say you missed 1.1, you missed a question in 1.1, or maybe 1.3, 2.4, whatever. You know, start there and then just kind of start filling in the holes, filling in the blanks, right? Use whatever resource works better for you. So let's say that for the first time around, you use Jason primarily, and let's say that you supplemented Jason's training with Professor Messer, right? Let's say that you like Jason's training a little bit better for whatever reason, right? You like the sound of his voice, or, you know, whatever it is. So when you're going back through it, you know, go through Jason's training, go through the one that resonated with you a little bit more. And then also, you know, look and try to find something that maybe you didn't use the first time, right? That's something that I always try to do, is I try to look for, you know, this didn't work this time. Maybe there's something else that'll help me a little bit more. So I always go to the internet. I look for additional resources, things that can help me understand things a little bit better, Okay, so that's my process, and making sure that I tackle each area on this exam. All right. Next is obviously I try to spend as much time as I can. I'm a hands-on learner, so I have to spend some time doing this stuff, right? If I don't, then I'm gonna miss something, right? I mean, there's only so much that you can memorize and remember when it comes to this stuff because there's just too much information here, right? So sooner or later, your cup is gonna be full, and while you're picking stuff up, you're gonna be dumping other stuff. You know what I mean? So for me, what solidifies stuff for me is doing it, right? If I can see it, if I can do it, I can remember it. If you say it, I might remember it, I might not. I probably won't, right? If you say it and I say it, I may remember it a little bit more than I did if I did it. But the more aspects that you add to your learning, the better the chances are that you're going to retain this stuff. So that's where hands-on comes in for me, right? I got to spend some time playing with this stuff, and then I'll understand it a little bit better, and I'll be able to put myself in those situations when I'm taking the exam. When they're putting me in scenarios, I try to put myself in it and say, okay, what would I do if this were a real life scenario, which it really is. Just got to figure your way through it, right? So, yeah, that's first. You identify what you know, what you don't know, and then you just start filling in those areas little by little, right? Get some hands-on if you can. And then the third thing is mix up your exams, your practice exams, right? Online Expert is one source. CertMaster is another source, right? Exam Compass can be a third source. You can use Pocket Prep. That's another one. Udemy, like he said, that's another one. The more different, the more variety you give yourself, the better you prepare yourself for anything. Okay. If you had to key in on one, I would probably key in on the one that words the questions similar to what you see on the exam. And, Mike is saying that Udemy does that well. I haven't used that resource, so I can't speak to it. I'll just kind of take his word for it. Another one is Pocket Prep. They ask the questions in a way that you can expect to see them on the exam. Also, CertMaster. I mean, CertMaster is through Pearson. So, it's kind of like getting it directly from the horse. You know what I mean? So, either way, just make sure that you mix them up. You're not taking any one exam too many times to where you get to the point to where you're memorizing questions. And then what else? Those are my main strategies when I'm preparing for any exam. It's just find out what I know and what I don't know. Fill in those areas, get some hands-on, mix up my practice exams. And for the most part, I've had success with CompTIA and the office exams as well. So that would be my advice from a preparation standpoint. From a test taking standpoint, my advice is, when you sit down to take the exam, obviously, I would say try to get there like 10, 15 minutes early. Have your business with you. Make sure you know what it is that then, find out what it is that you're still a little iffy on. And then that'll give you an idea of how to use that sheet they're going to give you. Okay. Next, don't stare at any question too long. Keep what do you call it? Momentum. Keep your momentum going. All right. Don't let any question stop you. Okay. If you come across something that you're a little on the fence about, just flag it and come back. Right. Like Mike said, he saw some questions that he didn't read well enough, and as he moved forward, he saw something else that reminded him, oh, you know what? This is what I was looking for instead of the other one. Right. And that happens. So don't get stuck on any question. If it's something that's a little left field for you, or you just, you find yourself looking at a couple of different answers, just flag it, come back later. But keep your momentum going. Okay, very important that you do that. Um, don't leave any questions blank. You know, if you come across one that you have to flag at that time, you know, take your best shot, right? If you don't know what it is off the bat, start the process of elimination. They normally give you at least one that you could throw out if you do your homework. So, you know, eliminate as many as you can. If you don't know what it is, look for what you know it's not, and then take your best guess. Go with your gut and flag it so you can come back later. Okay, but don't leave any blank and don't get stuck staring at any. Just kind of keep your momentum going, and then when you get to the end, then you can go back and, you know, go back to the ones that you flagged or the performance-based ones at the beginning, right? I skip those as well. I don't do them right away. I do them at the end because I know they're going to take me more. For the most part, they're going to take you more than a minute. So I always like to leave those for the end. Okay, and don't let it throw you off if you see something that doesn't really fit with the objectives, because they do throw in some random questions just to mess with you. I think they do it just to see. I don't know why they do it, to be honest with you. They're probably just throwing in there to see if it messes with you or not. But there's always going to be at least a couple that don't really fit with the objectives. So don't let it throw you off. Just take your best guess and keep going. All right. Is there anything I missed? Anyone else have any test taking advice? Kelly, we've been having some pretty good success lately. What is your strategy or your advice?
I pretty much do the same thing you do. I save the simulations for the end. And if I'm not sure, I'll make my best guess, but flag a question, then come back to it after I do the simulations.
Okay. Yeah, it's proven to be a pretty solid strategy for me, at least. Just make sure it's easy to get stuck staring at a question because of how they word them. Sometimes it's hard to understand exactly what they're saying. And so, you know, I'll end up having to read a question 2 or 3 times sometimes, just to make sure that I fully understand and that I'm not skipping past something, because I'll do that. I'm a natural skimmer. So, you know, naturally I'll skip over stuff, and you want to make sure you don't do that. So that's why I have to make a conscious effort to read every word and, you know, make sure that I'm not missing anything. So it is easy to sit there and be staring at a question too long. So, you know, just kind of take note of it. You know, if it's been about a minute and you're still staring at it, just flag it. Flag it, take your best guess, and then just move on. All right? The wording will throw you off, especially on Security Plus, okay? There's no getting around it. It's just how they word it. It's kind of like, you know, when you get to the military, I think most of us were in the military, right? Most of us were veterans. So, you know, when you get to boot camp and they're throwing all these acronyms at you and they're changing the names of everything, it's kind of like that. It's just, it takes a while to get used to the language. But trust me, it gets better. Okay, I mean, I speak the language a lot better than I did when I was trying to learn this stuff the first time. It comes with time. It comes with time and experience. But yeah, I just said all that just to say, you know, don't stare at any question too long. All right. Let's see what else. Yeah, social engineering. That's something that you're gonna see on this exam. Okay, you get your introduction to it in A+ on the second exam. You get your introduction to social engineering. It goes a little bit more into depth for Sec+, but not too much. So Mike is saying he got a couple questions on fishing, farming, whaling. They all have different different definitions. So make sure you understand your social engineering. Okay, you're going to see it on the exam. Let me see if I can find where they're going over it. It's going to be up here somewhere. Here we go. Social engineering, right? So this is what he's talking about. Your fishing, your spear fishing, right? These are 2 different terminologies, right? Whaling versus fishing, tailgating, impersonation, dumpster diving. You know, all these, they have their own definitions. right? Their own characteristics. So make sure that you know these, because I did see this on my last exam too. That's something that always stands out is social engineering. Okay, so you'll probably see that. You'll probably see some encryption stuff on there. You'll see some protocols that are being used that shouldn't be being used. So, you know, just make sure for the most part, you know, there's not as much troubleshooting on this exam as you would see on Net Plus, right? You don't really even have a troubleshooting domain here. It doesn't mean that you're not going to see any. You will. You're not going to see a ton of it. You're not going to see like what you saw on Net Plus. For those of you that took Net Plus, there's a ton of troubleshooting on Net Plus. This is more about the concepts and understanding the concepts. It's more conceptual and what's the word? When you have a bunch of like definitions and stuff. It's more about the concepts and just being able to identify stuff, right? So. Yeah, go ahead.
I got a lot of questions on, I just put it up there, private and public keys, and then what each goes to. So like I would get one question that was talking about email. And then the next, like 2 questions later, it would be private and public key, how does this work? What key do I need if I'm doing a VPN? And then a couple questions later, again, it popped up and it was like, Joe just got fired from his job. However, the CEO wants to recover Joe's files. What would I need to recover this? So you had to know like how to go grab, hopefully, obviously they kept it, but they don't tell you anything about it, just that. So I didn't know that, you know, you need to be able to recover the key and hopefully you have it stored somewhere. But I got a lot of, I would say I got probably about 15 questions on key technology and what you need for each. That seemed to be their big hit on my test.
Okay. PKI infrastructure, PS, yeah. Yeah, that's a couple. Definitely make sure you do your homework on that.
Yeah, and devices. Know a lot about the different types of devices and encryption for devices in the workplace, not like our devices. I got a lot of like, you know, the structure of the workplace and whether they can give you a phone or, you know, it's bring your own. There was, I would say, 5 questions on that alone and how to set it.
Okay, good stuff. Hopefully you guys are writing this down or taking notes. It's always good to talk to someone that just took the exam, especially when they have it fresh in their head. He remembers a significant amount of questions, a lot more than I do. After I'm done taking an exam, I'm kind of like mentally fatigued. So, you know, a few of the questions will stick out to me, but not as many as he remembers. He remembers a lot, so it's good stuff. Doesn't mean that you'll see them.
Yeah. I have a pretty good memory, but a lot of them came up.
Go ahead.
I had to take the test 3 times because the ones I didn't know, they were the ones that kind of like changed. The rest of the ones that I'm telling you guys, they came up on all 3 tests. That's where I got, you know, the almost 70% I needed. And then on the first 2, I missed by like a couple of points. But I missed on the one, I'm telling you, I really did not know the question. They threw the question and it wasn't, I would say, the usual CompTIA, like on A+ and Net+. They were very vague. So be ready and don't get freaked out because my first test, I was like, oh, okay, I don't know what they're talking about. I was really confused until I took the Udemy. And then I also went and watched the Professor Messer again. And then what I realized is he alleviates going through the book, the same book we get in the mail, like going through it 2 or 3 times. And he was right. When I went through and then the ones I didn't know, I reread that portion. And sure enough, when it popped up the next time on the test, I was like, okay, this is it. This is it. But I didn't wait until the 3rd test to actually go back and read the book again. So that was, I'll tell you, read the book until you know exactly when a question pops up, you're like, okay, that's it. Because the book, the questions are very close to what you're going to see on the test. He writes them very vague, And that's exactly how you get them on the test. And that's what got me. I was like, there was like probably about 20 questions. Like, I don't even know what you're asking me. I don't know what this is referencing, because when you see the CompTIA test questions that you get to prep, they're not going to be anything like that. They're not going to be verbatim. When you go to take the test, it was nothing like them. I got maybe 2 questions that mirrored the ones that I took through the CompTIA portal to test, do the test prep. So I was very disappointed in their, obviously they're not going to give you the exact questions. I mean, it's their test, but I was very disappointed. I didn't get nothing like that. And their questions that I took the prep were stuff you're like, oh yeah, I'm starting to get this. And then when I went, it was like, there is an attack. It's on a server. The server is normally run by Microsoft. And you're like, well, there's a ton of problems that I've learned, from reading and everything I know, but what are you getting at? And then I look at the answers, I'm like, okay, this is nothing that I know. So I'll tell you that.
I think we lost them.
I'm back.
So
I'm on a satellite dish.
Oh,
yeah, I just popped back in.
okay.
Yeah, if anybody has any specific questions, I can kind of remember, most of the questions that popped up, but I would tell you, know a lot about security, encryption, when it changed, how many bits. I got 3 or 4 on, is it 128-bit or what's the max this one can do? It wasn't like, hey, if I need the most current, best encryption, I didn't get any of those. It was knowing why it changed or what replaced what. I got a lot of like desk questions. And so I tell you, that's it. It's not like what I'm used to taking. I took it 2 years ago and it was nothing like that.
Okay. Well, good info. That's a really good recap. I appreciate that. And I hope everyone was taking notes. It's always good to talk to someone that's just taking the exam. Just keep in mind that there's a huge question pool. So you may get some of the questions that he talked about today. You may not. But it's always good to be as prepared as possible. So that definitely helps. All right, so it looks like we're out of time. This is a great session that we had today. I want to thank Mike for participating and giving a great recap and review and summary of his exam experience. Hopefully that helps all of you in your preparations for this exam. Don't forget, this session has been recorded. I will have it posted within the next couple of days. I just have to do a little editing. And then I'll have it posted up in the security section under Tutor Replays. All right. I'll also post it in the Facebook forum for those of you that use social media. All right. In the meantime, if you have any other questions about anything I was talked about today or anything that wasn't, don't forget to email me, troberts@learnkey.com, or my extension is 139. So you can just give me a call or email me, and then we can go from there. All right. So yeah, that'll do it. Great session, and I'll see you all next time. Tomorrow's session will focus on Net Plus. Everyone have a great afternoon.